Politicians in D.C. are pushing for a national law that would ban credit agencies from recording evictions and give free lawyers to tenants. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over a new proposal for legislation up in the House of Representatives. So there are some members of what they call the squad, and they're very, very anti-landlord, even though I've pointed out before, a couple of them actually are landlords. But they're pushing for this legislation because the eviction moratorium ended, and now they want more tenant protections out there. And the tenant protections they're pushing for are basically they want to ban credit agencies from listing evictions, and they also want to provide free lawyers for tenants. So these are two things that I've covered in other videos before. They're big issues, and I hate both of them, okay? All they do is they clog up the system. They make it harder for landlords to screen their tenants, and they make it harder for landlords to evict tenants, and the end result is that costs are going to increase. Landlords are going to get out of the business. There's going to be lower supply of affordable housing, and things are going to be worse for both landlords and tenants. Okay, so you know it's a completely horrible idea. I don't know if it's going to actually go anywhere in the House, especially since it's a national housing law, and you know, obviously these sort of things are normally left to local or state jurisdictions. So you know, I wonder what's going to happen with all of it. Now, before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think. Do you think this sort of national housing policy is going to pass? I mean, since it affects, you know, credit reports in that it says, okay, evictions can't be recorded on credit reports, there might actually be a way that they can do that part, you know, legally. Now, they can also say, hey, we're going to allocate funds so that we can provide these lawyers for people throughout the country. They can't mandate it, but they can definitely allocate the funds, and, you know, what local governments are turning funds down from the feds? Almost none. Okay, so there's a very good likelihood that these things could come to pass if this proposal passes. And, you know, that's frightening for landlords in even landlord-friendly places like where I live here in Nebraska. So, this article is coming from NPR.org, and it says, with evictions on the rise, House Democrats team up to push new housing protections. Yeah, we knew this was coming, okay? More housing protections ever since this eviction moratorium ended. And, you know, when they passed the eviction moratorium in the first place, they were emboldened. They were like, oh yeah, look at all this power we have. You know, we're going to really stick it to the man, stick it to these landlords, not ever realizing that, hey, most landlords are small, you know, most own one, maybe two properties. Yeah, there are some really big landlords out there, but that isn't the majority, okay? The majority of landlords are pretty small, okay? But let's get into this article. With evictions on the rise, 3 House Democrats are introducing legislation to curb threats facing tenants on the verge of losing their homes. The bill from Massachusetts Representative Ayanna Pressley, Connecticut Representative Rosa DeLauro, who also chairs the House Appropriations Committee, and Missouri Representative Cori Bush, comes after the federal eviction moratorium was struck down by the Supreme Court last August. The Housing Emergencies Lifeline Program, HELP Act, would ban credit agencies from recording evictions, fund legal assistance to fight landlords in certain cases, and ramp up enforcement against illegal tenant removal. Yeah, in their minds, they think that, oh, this illegal tenant removal thing is some big problem, okay? Now, there are very, very, very few cases of this actually happening and them actually having proof of it, okay? So them always doing this, what are they doing when they say, oh, we're going to stop these illegal tenant removal or eviction? What they're really saying is we're going to stop all evictions, or we're going to try to stop all evictions, even the lawful ones. And, you know, by making it so hard for landlords to evict that, you know, they have to jump, you know, and that's why a lot of landlords who are doing this, like the landlords who are committing these illegal removals, they made it so hard for them to evict tenants that they became frustrated and they broke the law, okay? That's the truth. If they were able to easily remove them in the legal process from their properties, there wouldn't even be any illegal removals. I mean, do you think illegal tenant removals are a problem in a place like Omaha, where it's a landlord-friendly place where we still have property rights? No, of course not. It's a problem in a place like New York where they tell them, well, you can't evict for any reason. You have to keep these bad people in your property who are tearing it up and not paying you rent indefinitely. Yeah, you're going to have landlords who are going to oppose that and fight back. So, yeah, I mean, but that's not the issue, okay? I mean, them also saying, hey, we're going to ban reporting of evictions to credit agencies, okay? Now, like I said before in my other videos, right? When you do that, you're taking away a tool that landlords use for tenant screening. So now a landlord won't be able to say, oh, well, this person was in the eviction process before. This person has a record of causing problems or maybe not paying rent. So I don't want to rent to this person. You know, and if a landlord can't do that, guess what? They take a tenant in, this tenant screws them over. It takes, you know, thousands of dollars and months out of their finances, right? And then the only way they can make that money up is by raising the rents. That's it. That's the only way that you can, you know, basically protect against that sort of situation, is by raising the rent so that you have enough money to fight those evictions when they do occur. So, like I said, this sort of legislation increases costs for landlords and tenants. It makes things worse, especially for those tenants who actually are good and, you know, pay their stuff on time, don't cause any problems. You know, they have to pay higher prices because of the bad tenants who are abusing the system, and because laws like this were put in place that forced landlords to take these bad tenants. Okay, and then the third part would fund legal assistance to fight landlords in certain cases. Now, as I said before, I have a huge problem when a government agency is paying, in a civil matter, paying for one side's legal costs and not paying for the other side's. A landlord has to take thousands of dollars out of their pocket to pay for a lawyer to fight a case in court, a civil case, you know, an eviction case, and the tenant doesn't have to pay anything. He gets free lawyers provided by the government. That is 100% unfair. If you're going to provide lawyers, you provide it to both sides. Okay, or you provide it to none, but you're already picking sides. You picked sides. You decided that the tenant's in the right, so you're going to give them a free lawyer? That's BS. And who says the tenant even needs a lawyer, okay? Providing a tenant with a lawyer when they don't have the financial need to be given this for free is stupid, okay? You could have a tenant who is a doctor making $400,000 a year, and you're going to provide them with a free lawyer, and they're renting a place from a police officer who's making 80 grand a year, you know? And they have to pay for their own lawyer. That's stupid. See, this is the kind of ridiculous government overreach that I hate. And, you know, this law encompasses multiple aspects of things that I despise, okay? It doesn't surprise me that you have some of the most liberal, progressive, far left politicians in all of Congress who are proposing this stuff, and they want to implement this nationwide. Let's get back into this article, though. This pandemic has had a devastating emotional and financial impact on our families, and Congress must act with urgency to protect them from eviction and keep them safely housed, Presley said. With millions of vulnerable renters at risk of being unhoused, including black, brown, and low-income folks, we must affirm housing as a human right. Yeah, so immediately this politician starts throwing the race card out there. Okay, there's plenty of people of all races, you know, black, white, etc., who are renters. So they shouldn't try to play this off as a racial issue, okay? What this really falls down to is this is a property rights issue. And I thought property rights were protected by the Constitution. So when the government comes in and wants to take away our property rights, then I'm always going to be opposed to it. Period. Okay. Now, I believe this Ayanna Presley is one of the squad members who I said before in another video is a landlord herself. Okay. So wouldn't it be ironic if she got caught up in her own net of BS, like she had a tenant who wasn't paying her for, years on end, and she was going thousands in debt, having to provide for someone else to live for free in her place. I mean, I wish that happens to somebody like this, okay? Because this is a complete joke. The proposal would authorize $10 billion in grants to fund related legal aid, require landlords to inform tenants of rights and responsibilities as a deterrent to illegal removals, and create a database to track evictions through the Secretary of HUD. Presley says the proposal offers critical support for families on the verge of homelessness, such as to narrow a gap in their legal recourse and help ramp up aid. DeLauro, who herself experienced eviction as a child, noted that only 10% of tenants have legal representation in what's often a fast-moving removal process. Now, does it matter what the percentage of tenants is that has legal, basically has legal representation? Not to me, okay? When it comes down to it, in a matter of fairness, it is wrong to say in a civil suit of one private party against another private party that one side has to pay for their own lawyer while the other side doesn't. That doesn't make any sense. Now, let's say a different situation, not a landlord-tenant situation, but you have a individual who is suing a bank, right? Does the government pay for, because the bank is, unlawfully seizing their money for some reason, okay? Does the government pay for the person suing the bank's lawyer? Well, why not? Because it's a civil lawsuit. It's between two parties. It isn't between the government and someone else. I could understand if one of the parties involved was the government, but, neither party is the government. So the government is choosing the side which they want to win by paying for the lawyer for the tenants. And that's wrong, okay? Now, I understand eviction is a traumatic thing for tenants, right? But at the same time, you cannot force a landlord to provide free housing for someone just because, this person can't afford to live there. So the landlord does have a right to get their property back. And they should have these property rights, and they are protected by the Constitution. So, yeah, I don't agree with this. It doesn't surprise me that these super progressive landlords are pushing it, and I'm fighting against it.